In a small, cozy restaurant tucked away on the corner of a busy street, the air smelled of fresh bread and sizzling food. The low hum of conversation and the clink of silverware filled the space. But for Mr. Henry, the owner, it was just another night. He sat in the back, watching his employees work. The restaurant was his life. He had spent years building it from the ground up, and it meant everything to him. But lately, the spark he had once felt had started to fade. The complaints were endless, about the food not being as good as it used to be, the service lacking that personal touch, and the atmosphere feeling off. As he sat in the back office, the weight of it all pressed on him. He had invested so much time, energy, and money into this place, but it seemed like something was wrong. His staff, once so eager, now seemed indifferent. The restaurant, once a dream, was slipping away, and Mr. Henry couldn't stand it anymore. That night, he made a decision. He was going to see things for himself. No more secondhand reports, no more hearing about problems he never saw. He would step into the restaurant like any other customer and see the truth for himself. He stood up from his desk and walked toward the back door. The kitchen was busy, and the staff was focused on their tasks. He made his way to the coat rack and grabbed a simple jacket, changing from his usual attire into something casual. He didn't want anyone to recognize him. He needed to be just another face in the crowd. After slipping out through the back exit, he took a deep breath and walked around to the front of the restaurant. The cool evening air brushed against his face, and he paused for a moment, taking in the sight of his establishment. The restaurant had been his pride and joy, but tonight he was determined to find out what was really happening when he wasn't watching. He entered through the front door, the familiar bell above the entrance, ringing softly. No one seemed to notice him at first. The hostess, busy with paperwork, barely glanced up as he walked past her. He smiled at the other customers who seemed engrossed in their conversations. The atmosphere was the same as always, but there was a tension in the air, one that Mr. Henry couldn't quite place. He made his way to a table near the window and took a seat. He could see the kitchen through the open door, the cooks moving swiftly, their faces focused as they prepared the evening's meals. He watched as the waitstaff moved about, delivering food, refilling drinks, and chatting among themselves. But there was something in the way they moved that made him uneasy. They didn't seem to have the same energy that used to fill the place. They were going through the motions, but the spark was gone. They didn't seem to care about their customers, or about making the restaurant the best it could be. It wasn't just a lack of enthusiasm. It was a complete disconnection from what had made the restaurant successful in the first place. As Mr. Henry sat there, his fingers tapping lightly on the table, he couldn't help but feel that something wasn't right. Was it the staff, the food, or was it just him, becoming too distant from the very thing he had built? Before he could dive deeper into his thoughts, a young waiter approached his table. The waiter was new. Mr. Henry had seen him around before, but they hadn't spoken much. The waiter smiled as he approached, his hands holding a notepad. "Good evening, sir," the waiter said, his voice polite, though he didn't seem to be particularly interested in Mr. Henry. "What can I get for you tonight?" Mr. Henry smiled, back keeping his tone casual. "Just a glass of water, please." The waiter nodded and walked off without a second thought. Mr. Henry watched him disappear into the kitchen. It wasn't that the waiter was rude. In fact, he was polite. But Mr. Henry noticed something. There was no enthusiasm in his approach. No eagerness to serve. It was as if he was just doing his job because he had to, not because he cared about making the customer experience great. Mr. Henry's eyes followed the waiter as he returned with the glass of water. He set it down with a clink and then walked off to attend to another table, again without much energy or focus. Mr. Henry took a sip from his glass, his mind racing. He couldn't ignore the feeling that had settled in his gut. He had always prided himself on running a tight ship, but now as he watched the staff interact with customers, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Doubt. Was it possible that his once thriving restaurant had started to lose its magic? Had he become too distant from the day-to-day operations to see the cracks that were beginning to form? Or was it simply a few bad apples in a growing pile of issues? The more he watched, the worse it felt. His heart sank as he noticed how little care was put into the details that used to set his restaurant apart. The interactions were flat, the food didn't seem as carefully plated, and the once friendly atmosphere was now filled with an air of indifference. He leaned back in his chair, watching his staff, deep in thought. He hadn't expected to feel this way. He thought he would come in, see a few minor issues, and leave with a clear plan. But now it felt different. It was worse than he had imagined. The tension in the restaurant was palpable. The customers went about their meals, oblivious to the fact that the man who owned the place was watching them from the corner table. They were simply enjoying their dinner, unaware that the future of the restaurant was hanging in the balance. As Mr. Henry watched the waiter move toward the bar, chatting with the bartender, his stomach tightened. This wasn't what he had worked so hard for. This wasn't the restaurant he had envisioned. The hook ends as Mr. Henry, still seated at his table, looks around one last time, feeling a sinking feeling in his stomach. Something had to change, and it had to happen soon. The sound of clinking dishes and the hum of conversation filled the air, but for Mr. Henry, everything felt muted. His eyes followed the young waiter as he went back to the bar. The waiter was laughing with his friends, clearly distracted. His eyes were no longer on the customers, and his attention was far from the needs of the people who had come to enjoy a meal. Mr. Henry's fingers tightened around the glass of water in front of him. This wasn't the level of service he expected. The waiter had handed him the glass of water without even bothering to check if it was clean. It wasn't just the glass, it was the whole attitude that was starting to show. The waiter was disengaged, unbothered by the fact that he had an important job to do. As Mr. Henry watched, the waiter passed by his table again, this time without acknowledging him at all. The young man was too busy chatting and joking with the bartender. Their laughter filled the air, but it felt out of place in a restaurant that once prided itself on delivering excellence. Mr. Henry felt his heart sink. He had seen it before, the casual attitude of staff who no longer cared. It wasn't just about the waiter, it was about the way things were starting to fall apart. The quality of the food wasn't the same, and now the service was slipping too. The waiter returned to his table, asking if everything was okay, but it felt like an automatic response, like he was just going through the motions. There was no real connection, no effort to engage with the customers. Mr. Henry caught a glimpse of the other waiters as they moved through the restaurant. They all seemed the same, going through the motions but without any spark. The passion that used to be there was gone. As he sat back in his chair, he thought of the days when he first opened the restaurant. The staff was full of energy, always eager to help, always friendly, always proud to work there. It wasn't just about the food, it was about the experience, it was about making people feel special. But now everything felt off. It felt like the soul of the restaurant was being chipped away, bit by bit. He wasn't sure when it had started, but it had gotten to the point where the restaurant had lost its identity. The staff was no longer working with heart. They were just collecting a paycheck. Mr. Henry couldn't ignore it anymore. He had to see what else was going wrong. It wasn't just the waiter. It was the whole atmosphere. He needed to know if this was happening in other areas of the restaurant too. With a heavy sigh, he stood up from his seat and walked toward the back of the restaurant, trying to remain unnoticed. He peered into the kitchen through the small window. In the door, what he saw didn't make him feel any better. The chefs were working, but it wasn't the usual careful precision that he was used to seeing. There was a rushed, sloppy energy in the kitchen that made Mr. Henry's heart race. It was as if everyone was just trying to get through their shift, not trying to create something exceptional. He thought back to the last few weeks. There had been whispers of complaints from customers about the food not being as good, but he had brushed them off, thinking it was just a few isolated incidents. Now, seeing the staff's lack of effort, he realized those complaints might be more than just complaints. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a raised voice from the dining area. A woman was arguing with her waiter over the quality of her meal. "This isn't what I ordered." "You've messed it up again," she snapped. Mr. Henry's stomach twisted. He had heard rumors of dissatisfied customers, but seeing it firsthand made him realize how deep the problem ran. His restaurant, his dream, was slipping away, and he didn't know how to fix it. As the woman continued to argue, the waiter looked lost, unsure of what to say or do. Mr. Henry noticed him glance nervously at the manager, who was standing by the bar, not offering any help. The situation was spiraling out of control, and no one was stepping in to stop it. The whole restaurant seemed to be unraveling. The customers' laughter was hollow, the staff's smiles were forced, and the food was no longer the star of the show. It felt like a ticking time bomb, ready to explode. Mr. Henry had to act, and he had to do it quickly before everything he had built crumbled before his eyes. He turned around, heading back to his table. His mind was racing and his hands were shaking. It wasn't just the waiter. It wasn't just the food. It was the entire culture of the restaurant that had been lost somewhere along the way. For the first time in years, Mr. Henry felt powerless. He was the owner, but he wasn't sure if he could fix this. As he sat back down at his table, he glanced out the window at the city bustling outside. The restaurant that had once been the heart of the community now felt like a sinking ship, and he wasn't sure if there was enough time left to save it. Mr. Henry knew he couldn't let things continue like this. The restaurant that had once been the pride of the town was now on the verge of collapse, and it wasn't just because of one bad waiter or a few complaints. It was much deeper than that. He had built this restaurant from the ground up, and watching it fall apart piece by piece was unbearable. He couldn't let his dream crumble without a fight. With a sense of urgency, he walked toward the bar area, where the manager, Kelly, was talking to a couple of staff members. They were laughing, but there was no enthusiasm in their voices, just emptiness. Mr. Henry felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "Kelly," he called, his voice firm but controlled. "Can I speak to you for a minute?" Kelly turned, her face quickly shifting from casual to tense when she saw the look in Mr. Henry's eyes. She had worked with him for years, and she knew that look. It was the look of a man who had reached his breaking point. "What's going on, Mr. Henry?" Kelly asked, her voice trying to remain calm, but there was an edge to it. She knew things weren't great, but hearing him address it head-on made the tension palpable. "We need to talk about the restaurant," Mr. Henry said, his voice steady but his frustration growing. "The food isn't what it used to be, the service is slipping, and we've got a staff that's just going through the motions. This place isn't what it used to be." Kelly opened her mouth to respond, but Mr. Henry raised his hand, stopping her. "I've seen it all tonight. The waiter who didn't even bother to check the cleanliness of the glass, the kitchen staff that's rushing through orders. And now, we have customers arguing because their meals are wrong. This is not the restaurant I built," Mr. Henry continued, his voice rising slightly. Kelly didn't respond at first. She had seen the decline too, but it was easier to ignore it, hoping things would improve on their own. But now, hearing Mr. Henry's frustration made it impossible to pretend anymore. "I'm sorry, Mr. Henry. We've been trying to keep things together, but the staff—" Kelly trailed off, unsure of what to say. "The staff?" Mr. Henry asked, sharply. "No, it's not just the staff. It's the culture we've lost here. When did we stop caring? When did we stop putting everything into this place? This restaurant was a family, and now it feels like we've forgotten what that means." Kelly shifted uncomfortably, and for the first time, she seemed to fully understand the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just a problem with the waiters or the chefs. This was about the soul of the restaurant. "I know, Mr. Henry," Kelly said softly. "But we've had a lot of turnover. The new staff doesn't care as much. It's hard to keep everyone motivated when morale is low." "And what are we doing to fix it?" Mr. Henry asked. His voice was cold, but his eyes burned with determination. Kelly hesitated. She hadn't expected such a direct confrontation. I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe we need new training, a new incentive program. I could talk to the staff. Try to get everyone on the same page." "That's not enough," Mr. Henry said, shaking his head. We need a shift in mindset, a total change in how we approach this place. We need to make everyone understand what we're trying to do here again. The passion, the pride, it has to come back, or this place won't last much longer. The weight of Mr. Henry's words hung in the air. Kelly realized that this wasn't just a conversation about improving service or food quality. It was about saving the very essence of what the restaurant stood for. They needed a complete overhaul, a renewal of purpose, or they were done. "I'll talk to the staff. We'll have a meeting," Kelly said, her tone more serious now. "We'll fix it, I promise." Mr. Henry nodded, but he wasn't sure if that would be enough. He didn't have time to wait and see if things improved. He needed to make an impact, and he needed to do it now. "I want to see some real changes, Kelly, starting tonight," Mr. Henry said, "and I want to be part of it. I'll work with you to get things back on track, but it's going to take everyone's effort. If we don't turn things around, we'll lose everything." Kelly nodded, her face now filled with concern. "I understand, Mr. Henry. I'll do whatever it takes." Mr. Henry glanced at the staff who were still milling about, unaware of the conversation that had just taken place. They were laughing, talking, distracted. None of them knew what was coming. They didn't realize how close they were to losing everything they had worked for. "We'll start tonight," Mr. Henry said again, his voice firm. "The restaurant has to come first. The food, the service, the experience, everything. We're going to turn this around." With that, Mr. Henry walked away from the bar, his mind already racing with plans for the future. He wasn't going to let his dreams slip through his fingers, not without a fight. As Mr. Henry walked through the dining area, he could feel the weight of every eye on him. The staff, still unaware of the conversation that had just taken place, continued to go about their tasks. Some were wiping down tables, others were checking their phones or gossiping in hushed tones. The energy in the restaurant was lethargic, and Mr. Henry could sense that the passion that had once fueled this place was fading fast. He stopped near a group of waiters and waitresses standing by the kitchen door. They were chatting idly, and for a moment they didn't even notice him approach. "Excuse me." Mr. Henry's voice cut through the air like a knife. The group froze, turning slowly to face him. Their expressions were a mix of surprise and annoyance, as if they didn't understand why their boss was interrupting them. "Can we talk?" Mr. Henry's eyes swept over them, trying to read their faces. A young waiter named Sam, who had only been working at the restaurant for a few weeks, spoke up first. "What's the issue, Mr. Henry? Everything going okay?" Mr. Henry didn't answer right away. He looked over the group, noticing how distracted they seemed. "Are you all really giving your best?" he asked, his voice stern but controlled. The group exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable. "Of course," one of the waitresses, Rachel, answered quickly. "We've been doing our jobs. Just a little slow tonight, that's all." "A little slow," Mr. Henry repeated, his tone rising slightly. "That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if you're truly giving your best. Are you taking pride in this place, or are you just showing up for a paycheck?" The silence was deafening. No one spoke. Mr. Henry's words hung in the air, heavier than he expected. This wasn't just about service anymore. This was about something deeper, something that had been lost over time. Rachel shifted uneasily. "We're doing our best, Mr. Henry. But the kitchen's been slow, and we're just trying to keep up with the orders." "Are you just doing your best, or are you doing what this restaurant needs?" Mr. Henry pressed. His words were firm, unyielding. The group remained quiet, unsure how to respond. Mr. Henry's gaze sharpened as he continued. "This restaurant is more than just a job. It's a legacy. You have to understand that. The people who come through, these doors expect something special. They expect an experience, not just food. They expect to be treated with respect, to be greeted with enthusiasm, and to have an atmosphere that makes them feel welcome. You're the face of this restaurant. You're the ones who make it what it is." One of the older waitresses, June, stepped forward. She'd worked here longer than anyone else in the group and had seen the restaurant go through its ups and downs. "We've been doing this for years, Mr. Henry," she said quietly, her voice tinged with frustration. "But it's not the same anymore. Things have changed. The staff has changed. We've all been stretched too thin. Mr. Henry could see the truth in her eyes. He knew the restaurant had gone through a lot of changes, but that couldn't be an excuse. That's exactly my point. This place isn't just a job, it's a team. And when a team falls apart, the whole thing suffers. The group remained quiet. Mr. Henry took a deep breath, feeling a growing sense of urgency. We've got to make a change, and I need each one of you to step up. I'm not asking for perfection, but I am asking for commitment. I'm asking you to care again. Not just about what's on your plate, but about what's on the plate of every single customer who walks through that door. The room was heavy with the weight of his words. The staff exchanged looks, unsure of how to respond. But Mr. Henry's voice softened, offering a glimmer of hope. We'll make this work, he said. I know we can, but we all have to be in this together. We can't afford to coast anymore. The group nodded, a few of them quietly acknowledging his words. Mr. Henry could see the shift, however small. There was a flicker of understanding in their eyes, a realization that something had to change. Mr. Henry turned and walked towards the kitchen, his mind already racing with plans. There was no time to waste. This was their last chance to turn things around. As he stepped into the kitchen, he was met with the familiar sound of pots and pans clanging, the hiss of the stove, and the quiet chatter of the chefs. They looked up as he entered, and for the first time that night, the room felt alive with potential. The head chef, Maria, came over, wiping her hands on her apron. What's going on, Mr. Henry? We're turning things around, he said, his tone serious but full of conviction. Starting tonight, Maria nodded, her expression thoughtful. I've been saying that for a while, but the staff's been unmotivated. They need to understand what's at stake here. I'm going to make sure they do, Mr. Henry replied, a sense of purpose filling him. It's time to bring back the pride this place once had. He looked around the kitchen, his eyes meeting those of the chefs. They were all watching him now, waiting for something. We're going to work harder, Mr. Henry said, and we're going to work smarter. But more than that, we're going to remember what made this place special in the first place. The chefs nodded, and for the first time in a while, the energy in the kitchen seemed to change. There was hope again. Mr. Henry smiled, his determination stronger than ever. They had a long road ahead, but he knew they could the next morning. Mr. Henry arrived at the restaurant earlier than usual. The sun was barely rising, and the quiet hum of the city hadn't yet reached its usual crescendo. Inside, the restaurant was still dark, but he could see the faint outlines of the team, preparing for the day ahead. They were already hard at work, ready to face whatever came their way. As he entered the kitchen, Maria was standing by the stove, checking over the ingredients for the day's menu. She looked up, her expression one of determination, but also a bit of uncertainty. You've got the team in line, Maria, Mr. Henry asked, his voice calm yet commanding. Maria gave a small nod. They're listening now, Mr. Henry. They're starting to understand what you meant. As the staff filtered in, Mr. Henry took a moment to observe. Rachel, the waitress who had been so dismissive the night before, was already wiping down the counters, and Sam was organizing the menus. The air was different. There was a new kind of energy in the room. But even so, Mr. Henry could tell there was a quiet apprehension. They weren't all convinced yet. Mr. Henry cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. I want to start the day with something simple. I don't want you to just work. I want you to think. I want you to remember why you started working here in the first place. He paused as the room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over them. This place was built on a love for food and a passion for service. People don't come here just to eat. They come here for an experience, a memory. And we've lost that. He walked to the front of the room, where the team gathered around him. But today, we're getting it back. We're not just serving food. We're serving something special. Every plate, every interaction, it has to mean something, so let's give it everything we've got. I'm asking you to take pride in what you do. I know we've been through some tough times, but we're not giving up. Not now, not ever. The staff exchanged glances, a spark of something new igniting within them. They weren't sure if it was going to be easy, but they were starting to believe in the mission. They weren't just working to survive anymore. They were working to thrive. As they set to work, the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted. There was a sense of urgency, but also a sense of joy. The food was being prepared with care. The service was more attentive, and even the small details, the way the tables were set, the way the staff greeted the customers, all of it felt different. By the time the restaurant opened its doors for lunch service, the change was already palpable. The first few customers trickled in, and the difference was evident in the way they were greeted and served. The staff was no longer just going through the motions. They were actively engaged, smiling, and creating a welcoming environment. The kitchen was bustling with energy. Plates were being delivered to the tables with pride, and every dish that left the kitchen was a testament to the hard work and passion of the team. Mr. Henry watched from the sidelines, quietly observing. There was a sense of hope in the air, and for the first time in a long time, he felt confident that they were on the right track. Later that day, as the restaurant began to fill up with more customers, a group of regulars walked in. They were greeted with warmth and enthusiasm by the staff, and as they sat down, they looked around, clearly impressed. One of the regulars, a woman named Linda, stopped by Mr. Henry's table. "I've been coming here for years," she said, with a smile, "and I can already tell something's different today." Mr. Henry returned her smile, nodding. "We're turning things around." Linda raised an eyebrow. "I can feel it. The energy here is, well, it's back to what it used to be." He couldn't help but grin. That's the plan. As the day went on, Mr. Henry saw more and more signs that the team was starting to gel. They were working together in a way that hadn't happened in a long time. The atmosphere was lighter, the service was smoother, and even the customers seemed happier. By the end of the shift, Mr. Henry was exhausted but satisfied. The change wasn't complete yet. They still had a long road ahead, but he could see the potential, and that was enough for him to know they were heading in the right direction. As he gathered the team at the end of the day, he looked around at the faces of the staff who had stuck with him through thick and thin. "You did good today," Mr. Henry said, his voice filled with genuine pride. "I'm proud of each and every one of you, but this is just the beginning. We've got a long way to go, but I believe in this team." There were smiles and nods of agreement. For the first time in a long time, the staff felt like they were part of something bigger than themselves. They weren't just employees. They were part of the restaurant's legacy. As the night ended and the restaurant closed its doors, Mr. Henry stood at the front looking around. The restaurant was quiet now, but there was a sense of hope in the air. They had a lot of work left to do, but one thing was clear. They were in this together, and that was the most important thing of all. Tomorrow, they would start fresh, with renewed passion, pride, and a team that had finally found its. The next morning, Mr. Henry arrived at the restaurant even earlier than usual. He had a sense of excitement running through him, but he also knew that the real test was coming. It was one thing to have a good day of service, but the true measure of change would come when they faced a busy rush, when the pressure was high, and when everything was on the line. As he walked through the kitchen, he noticed the team already hard at work. Maria was chopping vegetables with precision. Sam was organizing the prep stations, and Rachel was setting up the dining area with a smile on her face. For the first time in months, the kitchen felt alive with energy and purpose. Mr. Henry pulled Maria aside. "How's the team holding up?" She gave him a quick nod, her face filled with determination. "They're ready. We're all in this together now." His chest swelled with pride. Maria had always been the backbone of the kitchen, and if she believed in the change, that meant everyone else was starting to feel it too. The clock ticked closer to opening, and the first wave of customers arrived. Mr. Henry watched as the team began to move with an efficiency he hadn't seen in weeks. They were working together like a well-oiled machine. Communication was clear, tasks were getting done, and there was a quiet confidence in the air. No one seemed to be rushing, yet everything was happening just as it should. When the lunchtime rush hit, it was fast and furious. Plates were flying out of the kitchen, orders were being served, and the noise level in the restaurant reached a peak. But this time, it wasn't chaos. The staff moved like they had practiced for months, anticipating the needs of the customers before they even had to ask. Mr. Henry kept a watchful eye on everything, but he found himself stepping back more than he had in the past. He trusted the team now, and that made all the difference. Halfway through the rush, a large party came in. A group of business people celebrating a corporate milestone. The kitchen staff jumped into action, ensuring that the complex orders were prepared flawlessly, while the waitstaff greeted the group with professionalism and a warmth that hadn't been there before. One of the businessmen, a man named Mark, caught Mr. Henry's eye. He had been a regular customer for years, often bringing clients into the restaurant for meetings. Today, he looked around with an impressed expression. "You know," Mark said as he passed by Mr. Henry's table, "I've been coming here for a long time, but this feels different. The energy, the service, it's not the same place anymore." Mr. Henry smiled. "We're turning things around." Mark nodded. "It shows. Keep it up." The rest of the lunch service went smoothly, and by the time the evening rolled around, the restaurant was thriving. Customers were happy, the staff was working efficiently, and the food was being served just the way it should be, with care and attention to detail. As the last table was cleared, and the staff began to wind down for the night, Mr. Henry gathered them together once again. The exhaustion was evident on everyone's face, but there was also a sense of accomplishment. They had survived the day, and not just survived. They had excelled. "You all did incredible today," Mr. Henry said, his voice filled with pride. "This isn't just about good food anymore. This is about pride in what we do, about working as a team, not just for a paycheck, but because we believe in what we're serving." The team exchanged glances. There was something in the way they looked at each other now, a quiet understanding that they were in this together, no matter what. "But this is just the beginning," Mr. Henry continued. "We've made great strides, but we can't stop here. We need to keep pushing, keep improving, keep growing." They nodded, some of them even smiling with newfound confidence. The journey wasn't over yet, but Mr. Henry knew one thing for certain. They were on the right path. As he stood at the front of the restaurant watching his team clean up and prepare for the next day, a sense of peace settled over him. The restaurant had been through tough times, but now, with a renewed sense of purpose, it was stronger than ever. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, but with the team united, Mr. Henry felt ready for whatever came next. The restaurant wasn't just a business anymore. It was a symbol of resilience, of hard work, and of a team that refused to give up. And as he switched off the lights and locked the door for the night, Mr. Henry couldn't help but feel that the best was yet to come.